beast, sure. Yes, I, slick of oil for tongue. Yes, dirt black and rich. Against the night, I compare my intuition. I, who knows the cool breeze is on her way before she comes. I, who knows the leaf aches to fall before he do. Who I be, what could I possibly know before I know? What name does the moon call mean? If I must, if I moan, if I might, what black clock climbs out my mouth if I glimmer? Who comes to collect? See how every natural frond bends towards my breast. See how natural my longing is, how long I've been natural. I am as old as the myth and the mouth that first told it. What does the sky whisper about the wars I've won, the lovers I've kept? There is no song unless I vibrate the air. No song, no world, no word, no matter. Without you, you, no warplane, no child unmade by fire, no wound to the skin of the clouds. So, which of us moves heaven and earth? Which of us is hell while the other a whole world? What that moon knows, what should say is this dark one is mine. We make each other necessary. We've learned how to curl and glitter into the vulnerable evening. We do not run from the ugly heat, the darker side of an hour. We been here. We belong.
Mm.
And can I just say we're here together while the empire does what it does and while folks are doing what they do. And I've been feeling called to move slowly, lean into that. There's this old spiritual like hymn, um, and it's called "We Shall Not Be Moved." Really feeling that as an invitation to become unmovable, and so I've been trying to like in practicing slowness. And if you know me, you know that it is a practice. I am baby do too much, so I'm just trying to like root. So I'm gonna take a minute and like put both of my feet on the ground, feel my ass in this chair, close my eyes, and take a deep breath. And I just invite you to do that with. Because our nervous systems are rocked right now. So I'm just trying to between the poems. That is an invitation from Alexis Pauling. And I told myself I was going to do that even when I feel silly. So thank you for joining me in that. I'm going to do two more and get out y'all's way. Um, this was a this is a poem that comes from you with my grandmother as she was listening to ancestor, where she was talking about the way that cancer is impacting her body, and I was talking about the first time that I was at the police. And so I've been made incontinent by the state. The name of a small freedom fighting, my urethra yields a little sour water when I laugh. My body thinks I am screaming or being awake always, even if I moan as soft and slow as the ratification of law. There is nothing to stop the tension between my shoulders from melting into yellow. The body's bile, a bottom, a belly spilled. The math of it is I was kidnapped. Captors fitted in blue cotton to go bloody with my iron. My captors captured me with my eyes closed. 10 years later, and I still don't know why I ain't and run when their boots trembled the earth near my head. Something held me there, something that felt almost no too much, no something felt like the smirk of a thing, and like the animal I am, I was to a post with my legs splayed for my captors, each of them men, and then that one woman who worked hard when there were rules, my then ready to enter me and make me a whole thing, recoil from me as my emptied her river, and then I was the wrong way to be raped. Thank God. He soaked away and left me there, and I told my relief almost on orgasm. The cancerous cell of the carceral state trembling in my wake. And now, every time I feel joy, I leans in, and she led with me. Okay, last one. You know, I've been trying to write happy poems. I was like, let's do something else. And it's why is this so hard? So let's it's really not one, but it's the closest I've got so far. I was talking with a beloved friend, Tiana Bratcher, and another beloved friend, Imani Davis, who were writers. We were talking about how hard it is to write happy poems, and love poems, the fucking poems at the end of the world, or what feels like the end of another world. So this is that. Sorry that it's not happy. This is Inquisitions on the eve of the edge of being. Beloved, do you want liberation, or do you simply desire for the boot on your neck to another throat? Who do you blame for your ring? Beloved, do you call at the edge of the coming and the coming and the come? Have you forgiven your father If not, have you abandoned your God? When a loved one wounds you, do you tell them? Do you hoard your hurts to wield like a sword? What wild thing do you sing when you're angry? And would it frighten a child? Are you like a child now, frightened by it all? I am too. Let's put something on and dance until we are sweat and reckless. Do you know your name is my favorite prayer? Do you know what else you'll answer to when I forget? When it's your mother's turn to die, how will you mourn? And how may I hold you there? Are you thirsty for it? How can you tell when you're ready to forgive? Do you settle your debts at the end of the world? Do you settle? Do you smooth? Do you silt? Do you settle? Time breaks the rules here. We're all palmfuls of sugar. Beloved, do we do when we melt? What do with the womb? What do we do with the water? Let us ask. Okay, thanks, y'all.
Next time I read with you, remind me to go first. Like, I'm like, oh my God, amazing.
You friend. What you been working on?
So I've been writing novels, so I haven't been writing poems much, but I'm also tired of reading from the book. So I went back and I looked up some poems that didn't make it in the book, so older than the book, or some that I have tried to write in the meantime. So about like 3 of them here. I'll start with this one. This is an older poem. It didn't make it into Concentrate, though it was there for a while. I don't know what it was quite doing there. Something about it. I was interested in it.
Yeah.
It's after this poem by Larry Levis called "The Poet at 17." It's like the first in that book. Stars, I think. Really interesting poem. This is called Exactly. My youth, I spent it all between the knees of pairs, begging to name taunt or mistake me foreign. Then matured between worked weeks at the Queen's Boutique, which was an old regular. Behind my boyfriend's Chevrolet under sleet, and southern magnolias in hibernation pulsed like sea channels or seemed to channel a yearly casualty all over.
Come on.
I cleaned for the braiders. They sprawled their slippered feet out on the bowls whenever I vacuum around and hummed my 20 tunes, bed bottoms up, no hands. The sexist verses I saved for the band while living centenary. Some Chanel number 2 down my bloomers, where you know it blew exactly. Even when I smelled good, I smelled busy. And I hated high school. November's 60 to Wauwatosa Mall, just to sniff Court's teriyaki sugar pretzels. Those buses were so boring that I needed to smoke candy canes, clicking an ink pen in front of the pointy end to imitate. Sometimes boys with flies undone jittered past me towards the rows of seats without my noticing. And from my window, I watched all purple across a knack for telling city garbage from residential, tampon, tattered crisis mags, or playbills for fence hand of a wristwatch. Jaybirds. So why not admit it? I was petrified then. I had the sort of ship this nation usually only nicks into you just who break news, who arrive at megaphone just to or distrust it. I didn't trust my boy driving past where the Boy Scouts camped. His Chevy must have seemed exhibit pimp to those fist-headed campers whose kickballs and camera phones often sought the hood. Their curiosity left no dent, but say it had. None of them boys would have paid. Our hood, their hood, to heal. Hella girls at my high school from hoods unhealed aced palabras, sailed me on by to Ivies and free. All night they enthralled my jealousies with nothing on but the height of their nipples. Mine all in my father's chilly condo, which stayed so that my heart knit as I laid towards the kitchen in a camisole for sand. Now, had I known what my upper half was making that for temperature, I would have laughed. I was a damn good Mary May, bleach licks, fro picks, tips, a life like it seemed to kill me forever.
Ooh.
I don't know. That did.
I don't know.
The next one.
This is Courtney's way.
Yeah.
Just so y'all know, this is Courtney's way all the time. I don't know. And it's just something nasty, girl. This whole thing from the back of the closets.
Very Aquarius. Like I might say it's very Aquarius.
That's gotta be. At least just print me out a copy.
Okay. I'm gonna give it to you. This next one, don't really have much context for it. It's like one of those poems that I think it's just I published it somewhere like kind of like an online digital sort of magazine. But okay, I'll read it. I don't know what I'm saying. Okay. The School of Cosby. Near the pool we booked celebrate me. Musicians lined up outside of a small opal door. Any woman standing pelvis to the School of Cosmetology has her back lawn pool. So I see these makers of beauty even as chlorine stings my seeing. On my birthday, the water was blue like boy instead of blue like loss, though most of what I lost took its start in some boy. Whose was it who said my skin was the tint of a wick at the end of a vigil's life? I was getting black as Memphis, bracketed as mischief. Mama bought me keyboard and elegance lessons. Class turned me beige, and curtsies turned me into fury. Codas, forks to the left. Women from the school do hair out on the lawn on styrofoam heads. They give out free beads whenever we pass by. I'm going to dry off and go get mine, I said. I get mine.
Yeah.
Okay. One last one. This was supposed to be an ekphrastic poem off of Carol Walker has this piece called First Effort, and how I interpret it, it's like, if I can remember correctly, there's like a figure laying down. Yeah. It kind of looks like sleep, coffin of some sort, to kind of what I to be children hovering above. So I imagined them as like ghost children visiting her. That's how I took it. So this is third effort. So it's in parts. Vision, I'm visited by my previous friend. They, as you imagine, severely cross with me. From the ceiling, they serenade me with profound sessions of looking. I let their looks assess my where plain mistakes got made. I let their looks praise me, since had they lived, I would have been the recipient of praises forever. In a kitchen, I flaunt lines of hogs taken out for surrender. I set the stove on its highest summer. I ask one child to and the other to mince, but neither know what to do. When it comes to violence, death has left them without a clue. I thought heaven had a school, I said. I thought heaven's highest tenet was truth. I went cross. I wore a butcher's shock. 2. Since they never lived, I described to them the sensation of living, what it is to be systemically concussed, hushed by curriculums of cussing. In school, fluorescence hissed me awake. Floorboards broke in a hive of moans beneath me. Barrettes undid themselves against my temples randomly, as if beauty were in protest. Beauty had a prior engagement, it seemed. Beauty had some place to be beyond me. 3. In life, everything you learn incites a vision, each one bruising your head and mooning it. Example, after learning the term open air prison, I had a vision in which I made eye contact with the historical imagination, a painful, awkward, then returned to being burned in present tense. Panic crouched in my mouth like a slur of hiccups. Truth spoke at me in systemic lisp. None of what I learned in school. School useless on earth as it is in heaven. Ooh.
That's how you end.
All right. Well, also I want to say I'm grateful to be here with both y'all who are my dear friends, but also poets I really admire. So this is really a occasion, this celebration, and you.
Yeah.
Too.
And I can't think of a better way to gather.
Yeah.
On this fabulous collection. So
yeah.
One more time. Just
y'all are so talented.
Well,
y'all are so talented and amazing human beings. So it's lovely to be here and with everyone here. And the people I know, to all the people I don't know, it's lovely to be out on Wednesday. I think it is Wednesday.
It is indeed.
I'm just gonna read some poems. I'm from California originally, and being Black is strange. It's not a lot of but and when I left Cal, I was constantly sort of berated with this idea that there are no Black people there, left, or they're in LA, and I was like, before it was, over by big tech, and my family, who were all four of my parents were Southerners who migrated to the same Redwood, same place, Redwood City, and my parents have known each other since they were 12. So, this is sort of a tribute to them, but also an argument against time.
Correct.
I ran, I could no longer catch wafts of ocean salt or hot tar in the air, crossing over the rural terrain until there was no evidence of home. Just the backbone of eras and everything I have failed to put to language. I have avoided the detail terror, the cocks crawling egg while I slept at a friend's house, how they laid eggs in the walls. My third grade teacher called the cops on me as I sat in a field crying about a bully. The floors I slept on, the empty refrigerators, how ringworm grew mauve on my cut thigh. The boy who begged me to show him my developed cheese and took a Polaroid picture of them that developed too quickly summer light. The way my mother beat me for it. In the present, no one believes me when I say we rarely saw the or it's the children who are the silent casualties of unprotection. Or even now, the mist siphoned through me instead of blood.
Yeah.
Rippling through the dark. My mother wakes at night, dishes. The dog on his back snores as she passes through the living room like a ghost in a floral nightgown. She's always been the elusive love in my life, expansive as memory over a battered body, the moon. Dignified in the sky, pierced through the kitchen window of all its light. Light traipses through water, and water envelops my mother's hand. How her hands have torqued my dark body. Of light I have never stood illuminating the past. Here are my mother's hands scrubbing my dirty dishes. Here are my mother's hands clutching a belt like a horse breaker. Here are her hands holding the larynx of a broom, wishing my God, who clutches me by the throat, says I'll beat you like a bitch street. Don't beat your kids. We don't believe in corporal punishment. Don't do that. Somebody might write a book about you. Sorry, I'm unserious, y'all. They have both marked me with their blind and terrible. Lord. 1. My father is the dark shadow, obscured by the mark of someone's careless fingertip on the lens. He hears me, my face somewhere in the ache of his pointed shoulder, seeing the picture now. No, he grins with the power to make me his obedient daughter. Though I'm uncomfortable there in his lap, my body limp, heavy as a child can make her body heavy. It must be my birthday party. She shuffles away from the frame wearing a crown, red, white, and gold. My father in the foreground. I can feel his warm breath in my ear. Don't you love me? Don't you love your daddy? Tobacco and all fixed in his smell. We sit on my grandmother's striped and gold couch. Above us, pictures of black figures in bright colors dance seemingly off the walls. 2. Even after my father through a breakthrough. In my window, after the broken glass on the carpet became a montage of refraction and stars. Someone thought to picture my father a skeleton, a shadow man. Darkness no longer matters, but light in time. I am trying to escape into the foreground of the picture, pushing away from his bird as he smiles. But he is holding me still as if I owe him something of myself. He demands my love, and I want nothing more than to escape the violence, the danger of his psyche. According to my mother, he saved my life because he married her, so she would not end the pregnancy. 3. My grandma, I collect photos I haven't seen in years from her mobile home. I show my mother this picture. I must be 5 or 6. Front teeth missing, twists coming undone in a ponytail after having a barrette. I think this of my life then is playful, funny even, something of the past we could agree on. She says, nothing to do with you, your hair, or your name. That was she and your Nana. I look down at this picture. On the back, I've managed to spell my own name. Erica, knowing it would be many years before I would learn the mournful sound of letters together make meaning. She continues, Erica Tiffany, E.T., I was afraid the kids would think you were an alien. My mother tells me this almost as a confession, laughed 28 years after giving birth. She refuses to say what she regrets. The life, shame, the 40 sound I should have aborted you makes. Even now, my mother spends making sure my ponytails fixed, that I had the knockers to match my outfits, money shop, canned food store for green beans and corn. Spent 40 hours a week working with white men who would call her outside her name, bitch. She provided the roof, no matter how minor or how imperfect it was over our heads. She tells me this now to prove she did her best at mothering, as if to redress the way she made my insignificant life then fathomless. Even now, she doesn't address the beatings, the way she would swing the belt like a woman with nothing to lose. Somehow, I want to forget the way her hand snatched me from a chair and swung at my child body like I were a grown man. The memory of my sister peeling our mother off of me, begging, Mommy, please stop. The memory of the way I loved my mother. Offer the weight of myself at the altar of her chest when she was too tired to push me away. Even now, she says, it was the depression that made me so angry, so unforgiving. But I've learned my lesson because God shatters table when we screamed at him, "Take my life." Mother, strange is the lineage of our pain, its smallness. The rivers of its past passed like milk between mothers and their daughters. Even now, I don't say, "Mom, you lost your will to live," and I beg God to kill me too. Beg God to take me from this violent arrangement of suffering. Asked him for your hands to be wrapped like a gentle lead around me. Begged your hands be the ones to murder me. So, in the center of this collection is a personal poem from the perspective of Mary Ellen Pleasant, who was an abolitionist in San Francisco, which there were slaves in California, and they often were used mine gold and sent back south after their masters struck gold. Mary Ellen Pleasant was a financier who made her riches by leasing or loaning money to miners and making more money through the interest. And then she used part of that fortune to help John Brown's raid on Harpers Ferry. Yeah, people don't talk about it, but we should.
Yeah.
I'm just going to read the epigraph in the chart, and we know this, aka anti-Blackness, be the ground on which we stand. Call me a great financier, a witch, Queen Esther, whatever you need to justify my long status as a free woman and why I would possess all that money. It doesn't matter how I got here. I am all those years I spent fighting. There is nothing I can tell horrors of captivity. Yet I can tell you of my husband's current eye and the hook scar just his lip, and how I threw myself into the service of the underground after death. You see, south of the Canadian line slips the imagination, circadian rhythm of justice is interrupted. For the slave, there is no such thing as leisure, only the constant intrusion, only the bleak memory of confinement. There is no more time or patience left in me for white people who own slaves, nor those who think that the plight of the Negro himself. Friends of all kinds of about me. They say, "Mammy Pleasant, is it true you knew down and handed him all that Harpers Ferry?" It doesn't matter if it were true, though it is. But like the night I have tried to hold to truth, I know the path to freedom is mysterious, losing your mother's face in memory. Hoodoo, I did whatever to steal my people home. So Mary Ellen Pleasant was born in Georgia, and he randomly got free because she was too smart to be enslaved, so he purchased her. And yeah, audacity. Purchased her, sent her to Nantucket. She would learn to read, and then we'd be connected with the abolitionist movement in the Northeast.
White people are so funny.
But let's talk about John Brown. That's what I really want to talk about, but we'll talk about voice literacy. In Nantucket, the whites were the same as they were in Georgia. They just had a new language for drudgery, unencumbered by the fear of the Negro learning. My mistress was ambivalent toward my learning as long as I kept up with the and hands soured in the soap and starch, cooked the fish and beans they loved to eat, and moved invisibly about the house. I loved her most in winter, held them for her face, my own reflection tenderly in my hands, in the warmth of water when I washed. As I began to learn the mistress with me, each time I sounded out April, apple, or wrote weather when I meant weather. The snow is falling outside our window. She called me unable to apprehend language or original thought of those moments when my mother rubbed pig fat in my hair during leisure to keep the ticks away so the edges wouldn't break, as she recounted the rules of root work. Sorghum is good for when your feet swell up. Salt your door. Say this prayer. Keep us from sinking down when cleaning. I've cleaned so many wounds except my own. I spent days then washing the walls, floors, bonnets, undergarments, determined to learn a new episteme. I spoke to myself, do not give this world your flesh. Make callous the feeling of her lash, of her criticism, the curvature, the ascent of sound with each stroke of a letter. Learn to write your name. I'm going to read one of this section, something bodies.
Your internal clock is so good. Cool.
I'm over here like, let me get out of here. I'm actually gonna leave it here, and I'm gonna read one from a couple more from this next section. My family. Again, this collection is an argument against time, so it's not chronologically in in a similar way that I find my experience of trauma to be. So I'll start with that interruption. Meet cute and read. My grandmother tells me there were clubs strung like a string of pearls along the dark neck of a woman, up and down the peninsula. Music and lights warbled along the coast. She wants to avoid the past and its routine burden of me. The year was 1960. Myra had just turned 18, was fresh up from Texas, running from that 3-room house, her mama's church, the heat, her minister preaching fire and brimstone, and those possum carcasses Daddy Buster would stew after the crop. I can imagine my mother, thin ankles, afresh in her hair, the drawn-out drones of B.B. King drawing her further and further into the watering hole, where she would meet my grandfather, the 28-year-old pinstripes would proud and say, "Pretty woman, my name's Jimmy." Right.
Period.
He was a Pisces. Two section. it's with experience. Because I think while I was writing this book, I was just searching for their stories, which were a lot more elusive to me because they were from a different part of the country than I was. Every time they told a story, it felt like it such a distant memory, even though it wasn't that far. And while I was writing, I just felt like in this sort of abyss of ready to take what would sort of come my way. My nana specifically would just give me like drop little like grandmothers. And I think even after writing the book, I am still figuring out exactly what she meant to say to me about the world. Routine, 1971. In a tree, the girl twists wax from their stems, tilts her head, remembering Big Mama's lilt, wide inside before they bloom. Her mother calls her driveway Kimmy. They make their way from the small home they rent in Menlo Park to a mansion near Sird, singing along to the Delphonics on the radio. Didn't I blow your mind this time? Didn't I? The mother stands in the foyer, pointing laundry room, and the genius of her being. Some lead these kids as light refracts diamonds on her skin, while I iron the sheets and books. My grandmother says, mother and daughter make this a weekly routine, the filth of white folks together, even here. I see my mother's hands submerged in water, the smell of fruit, earth, and the gentleness of girlhood washed quietly away. One more. In the opposite of home, the road. Signed Yosemite National Park, 85 miles. Curves into a field of alpha. Heat breathes the sun's corona bearing down direct above this agrarian of earth. The Sierra Nevada is not as clear as I remembered them. Granite monoliths of the planet's evolution stalking a bright and clear sky. Now only the mountain's yellow base is visible in the smog. In my rearview mirror, a man works a field alone along the feet of this mountain. For a moment, I do not notice my foot off the gas. 60 miles per slowing to nothing but a mess and motion, and the erupting shimmer glosses the tar surface of the county road. The man reminds me of another man, hardened in memory of my grandmother, her father. Daddy Buster, a sharecropper who labored until his hands were black oil, with the need to feed a wife and 15. Once I asked my grandmother for his story, and she said no. We can't dwell right. this story? And she, no, we can't dwell past. No, we didn't suffer too much. God will turn us to salt if we look back at everything we've lost or never had.
I didn't even laugh. It was just very grandma.
Yeah.
No, right. I was like, no.
No. And then don't, whatever you offer, whatever they offer you, you can't. Don't ask them more questions. Don't, I
None.
because I will tell you what I just gave. I talk with my grandmother, and she would say something like, I don't know, something rare that she probably wouldn't want me to repeat. But I'd be like, let's talk about it. She'd be like,
for what?
I just did.
Right. What else
That was
there?
beautiful. That was so gorgeous. Thank you so much, and thank you for this book. Oh, motherfucker.
No, absolutely.
No.
It's a hefty girl.
It is.
In the bed.
I think you're right. I'm reading. I wrote that. That's crazy. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I was like, I know that's heavy, y'all, but I promise you, not that serious.
Yeah.
Questions?
Time for questions?
Yeah.
All right, we did questions, lots of excitement from our audience online, but we're going to focus our questions on the folks in person. If anyone wants Mike first. Well,
I want to know. So y'all is a philosopher, a theorist, and a poet, and I think the three of us have gotten to know each other a lot over the few weeks. But I think like learning your orientation to use of poetics really was rich. And like really like it gave me like a platform to like engage the book. So I'm just curious about like the way, I mean, we talk, time is not real and it's not linear. If it is really not linear, but I'm just curious about like what relationship between time and what and like how that guided you to like talk about Mamie's story, and in addition to the like mapping your family's history. I've just always been really curious about how those particular three kind of motifs came together for the book.
Yeah. Well, so one of the, I'll start with this, the guiding question from the book. It doesn't actually show up in the book, but it was me, which was how to.
This mic is like.
I'm gonna just hold it. Oh, it might be the other way. That works. Yeah. Yeah. The guiding question of the book was, how do I unmake myself of violence? Yeah. And I was really C.D. Hartman's Penis to Two Acts. Y'all know that. I've read it like 8 times. I read it so much while I was writing this book. And one of the things that C.D. Hartman argues is that like we should use manipulation to fill in the gaps caused by um, racial slavery, we need to sort of critically imagine the lives of women. Mm-hmm. And I took on that project, and this is, the Hartman, but I felt like I failed because I could not create a cohesive narrative, linear. And I always felt like, critical fabulation, there was this desire for linearity. It was right in the book, I could write poems in order.
Yeah.
And when I was trying to put them in order, they refused. They would attach themselves to each other by phrases, by images, and all of these things for trying to create evidence of the, create evidence, like not even proof. I hate that word proof, but trying to create just to they compiled themselves according to resonance. And when I sort of stood back and I was really driven, people wanted me to publish this book without the Mammy Pleasant poem. I had multiple people say to me, like, this is something else. She needs more space. And I was so adamant because I did not want for people to think that I, as the artist, was blaming my family for this violence.
Yeah.
That this violence was state sanctioned. And how Black people deal with that state sanctioned violence, that state sanctioned anti-Blackness in private space is something that we often do not talk about.
Yeah.
And the way I family dealing, my grandmother, my Mima, her first picture, cotton field. My grandmother, they were my great aunts and uncles would pick hundreds of pounds of cotton in Texas every year as children. And I knew about the shame attached to that. Same with my nana was Gullah Geechee, and they refused to talk about that language. It was like this shame, right, that I knew was permeating my family, how we reacted to each other. So in some ways, those poems helped me orient by being the center, locus, orient all the sort of traces temporally of the violence experienced in my family, the violence my family experienced amongst each other, and that in me to think against time as history, time reversal, time as starting with the Greeks and ending up with us now. It enabled me to orient myself in Black time, period, which linear was not. Even in the time of the novel, and the great Toni Morrison, I think her novels are evident. Yeah. So that was really it. I was trying. I was strictly fabulating. It's too many gaps. It's too many gaps. But I think the gaps are supposed to be there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's funny because this is not a question. It's just about like the just probability and the non-linearity of our friends and our like read each other's work and engage in each other's work. And before that, we're already, I mean, like, I think like it's easy to a text about your family, just like it's easy to call Courtney's work like a text about like this incident that happened, and I let you know, and it's like it's actually unthreading the sort of linearity of that, because there is so like, we whiteness has undone time, and undone like memory, and you have to well I but you have to with the wild of that sort of like everything all at once.
You gonna laugh at me for this, but Fanon says Fanon says at the end of Black Skin, White Mask, I belong irreducibly to my time. In this perpetual presence.
Don't get her started.
And so I think that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. That's so important.
This I'm like trying to formulate. It's not a question, but like I feel like at least I was introduced to your work through your love poems, the Kava Econom. So like that I'm like, okay, like those, like the queer love poem, but like some of the most powerful love poetry I've heard ever. And so like in this book, like this statement, mother, she's always elusive love of my life. So like this, our mothers as a nexus for life, what we know of love as queer Black women, like in the pain of that and how it makes that love so complicated. Can you talk more about that?
Yes, that's it. That's the question. I mean, that's and people don't ask me that question. I think it's a great question. Yes, I mean, so these collection are my mother and how it's between us, and how I was unable to overcome that distance, and you know what I was left with, at least in this first collection, is carrying with that gulf between us, that abyss between us, and I think sometimes, especially as Black people, especially if you were raised as a girl, it is to talk about your mother.
Yes.
And I was writing the book, I sort of felt that kickback from a lot of people. They're like, "Oh, are you sure? Like, keep this at home." And that is my most pervasive. I love my mother dear, but that is my biggest wound. And that is the wound of my childhood, the one I'm carrying. And even in the case of like the queer love poem, I carried that to any non-man I have ever loved. Is that wound? And I think at times we don't like to admit that. Like I'm trying to convince my mother still to love me there. Even now. And that goes back to like the time element, like this argument